Hi guys, welcome to my quilting life. I'm Tiffany. This is part 2 of a 3-part video series of the burst block. So I don't know where part 1 ended and I don't know where part 2 is beginning, but I know that part 2 is most likely the part where the review is in. So you have to watch part 1 to know how to start this, part 2 to get my review, and part 3 to see how it all gets finished. You know how it's finished, but you need to see it because there's no point in watching 1 and 2 and not watch 3. So please watch all 3 parts. This is part 2. Don't forget to watch part 1 and part 3 when it's available. See you at the end of this video. So the next part is to add these, but instead of pulling all these onto my lap, I'm going to grab this whole entire stack here and put those on my lap, and we're going to piece from the bottom up, meaning we're going to piece these to this side, but we're going to be turning the whole thing around like this, sewing these on from the bottom up. So I'm going to turn these upside down so that I have my bottom piece. That way when I grab my bottom piece that's already right side down, goes on like this, and then flips open like that. So I'm going to be sewing them from the bottom down. So this whole stack will go onto my lap. And I'm going to keep the camera rolling for a second so I can show you how that works. So I'm turning the whole pile onto my lap. Okay. And I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm not going to press it or anything. I'm just going to line this up. These are upside down now next to me. So all I have to do is grab it and lay it on top. I'm still going to hang it over the same amount on each end. And I'm still going to chain piece, keeping everything all hooked together. And remember that it is all on the bias. So be careful because all this will stretch. So now I'm going to take this piece, it's still hooked together, but I'm going to bring it over here just a little bit and then grab my next piece, which is right side down already in the position I need it because I already turned everything, and I'm going to start sliding it in, and I'm not going to stretch or pull, just like that. Grab the next one, kind of bring it over, keeping them hooked together. It's no big deal. Grabbing it, it's already upside down. Come up, making sure I have the same amount on each end hanging off. Because it's biased, it will pull just a little bit, but just align them. Grab that next one. They're already right side down. Makes it easier. And then just sew it through like this. Turn that next one. Should be the right color. See, it's the matching color. As long as it was turned upside down right here, or else you'd be working from the top down, and make sure that you flipped them so they're still in the correct direction when you go to put them on. Oops. So making sure everything's lining up. Keeping it all still connected. Okay, so if I was to flip this piece over, it's the correct direction. It looks just like that, so it creates a square. And there's no other way to put it on here, if that makes any sense. So just put it on, right sides together, slide it over, and start sewing. Just like that. Okay, that's how it works. So now they are sewn together. They are still hooked together. At this point, Honestly, you do not need to keep them in order, but you can if you want your next cut to line up with your next pieces, because those were cut off originally from these. So if you're doing something that, say, you want to match up, make sure you keep them in order. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep them in order for my process sake, and I'm going to go ahead and snip all these apart and get to the next step. Okay, so now that we're done with the piecing of the two sides on there, it still looks kind of wonky. You can leave it like this and just trim and square everything up, or you can do the next part. So we're going to go ahead and press these. As always, I'm going to flip it upside down because I want to start from the bottom up. That way these pieces right here match the pieces that were cut off. And I think actually this was the bottom. That was the top. I remember the dark piece now. So yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and press these. This will put them bottom down. So this will go on the bottom where it was. So I'm going to take this piece. I'm going to go right here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to press my seam out like this. Outward is the way my seam is going to go. As soon as my iron is ready, I'm going to press them out, and I'm going to press the whole entire stack of everything. Okay, now that everything's pressed, and I hope you noticed that I was pressing with the bias grain the whole entire time. Instead of side to side, I was kind of going up and down like this. That way we don't stretch or pull anything out of place. So here's what it looks like so far. So let's go on to the next step, which would be trimming, which is hiding right there. Okay, so now all the pieces are attached. This is what they look like so. So they still look super weird, like a bat with wings or something. Yeah. So again, you can trim it into a square at this point, or you can keep going with the template. We're going to keep going with the template. So what's going to happen now is I'm still working from top to bottom, since my other pieces over there at the far side of the screen, those are still in order from these, so I'm just going to go in order from these. So again, I'm just going to flip it over, move it out of the way. We're going to grab one like this, and we're going to take now and go for, oh my goodness, let's see, put my hand over it, number 2. So this number 2 with the whole line to the top and bottom is going to get lined up on this next seam right here. I'm going to straighten it up. So number 2 is going to get lined up. I cannot cut in this angle, but I'm showing you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn myself around, but I would cut here. And then same as the first time, we want to make sure that this little piece right here is always on the center of the burst block. So then I take line number 2 again, upside down this time, and then I would cut. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all of these and stack them aside, and then I'm going to trim them with a square ruler. So let's get to some cutting. I'm going to go ahead and do one real quick while I'm here. So I'm going to line 2 with the 2 dots up on my newest seam, and I'm going to cut that off. Do not throw that away. You might need that. Turn it over line it up again on line 2. It's kind of weird because line 1 and 2 are so close together compared to line 3. So I'm going to go ahead, line that up, make the cut, and I'm not going to throw it away. I'm just going to take these pieces and lay them over here on the side, just like this, over to the side. And for now, I'm just going to go ahead and stack that out of the way. So again, I'm going to come over here, line 2 with the 2 dots. My first block piece is always in the center. The whole line of the block, or of the template, is on my seam. Make one cut, put that over there, flip the ruler, come to the other side because I want my center thing to be over there. Line 2 with the 2 dots will now go on this. Make a cut, put it in my wonderful pile, and I'm just going to keep stacking them all up. And I'm just going to go in that same order because of the way I have been sewing this whole entire time. I tend to do that over and over and over again. So there's one, flip it over, do the other side, and then when I get to it, I'll show you how to trim them yet again. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep going over and over until they are complete. So I know at this point we're supposed to trim and square this off right here, but if you notice the pieces that you have cut off prior, these parts, they are still way oversized and there's still going to be a ton of waste. So if you were to, hoping I'm in screen, okay, so we're going to pretend that we took a 1/4 inch seam away right here, right? It's about right there. If you were to just add it as is and then line your 3 up on your seam to trim it, we're still going to have a perfectly square quilt block because these right here are still sticking out as even if we were to have trimmed it. So I'm actually going to skip the trimming process on this step, and I'm going to go ahead, since these are going to be way big anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just start attaching these. So the next step is, normally you would trim all this off. I'm not going to even bother, and you guys know that I'm known for skipping steps, making things a lot easier. I'm just going to go ahead and now take that stack of those sides, and I'm going to just go ahead and attach them. As is, they're going to still stick out pretty far on each side. They should still be equal. They should still come out perfectly fine, because as long as enough of this is in line and enough of this is in line, it is still creating a block. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that trim part, and let's get to the sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and take my pieces. I'm kind of in the way here of the camera, so I'm just going to put my pieces here. And I'm going to grab the one side to start with. Everything should still be in its order of the way it was taken off. So this side will now get attached. And I'm going to go ahead and chain piece all these through. And then the same as step 2, when I added those, I'm just going to flip the opposite side all the way down on my lap and go upside down, piecing on the other side. So let's go ahead and take the camera over and show you how to attach these. Okay, so like I said, I'm skipping a step here. I am not going to trim this block. Okay, so everything is still sticking out. But I feel comfortable, and I think you should too, that these are going to stick out once this is right sides together. No matter what you're doing, you're going to be trimming a lot off. So as long as you have the same distance sticking out of one end that you do on the other end, you should be good. So I have the same amount on both ends. I'm just going to go ahead and attach these on here. like this. Not going to stretch or pull, because this whole entire time we are still sewing on the bias. So I'm just going to grab the next one, which was in front of the camera, sorry. And it's about, I don't know, 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch now sticking over. Go ahead and just line them up and sew them. So I went ahead and skipped only the process of squaring the block up, because I feel that we can get away without squaring it, due to the fact that the pieces that I'm sewing on now were still on the big side. So either way, we were still going to be chopping more than enough off. Like I said in the beginning, this does have a lot of waste. This is a pretty, and I'm not going to save those pieces because they're really thin anyway. They're skinny pieces, so I'm not going to bother with saving those. I mean, if they were bigger, I would. But they're more smaller than a regular crumb, so there's no point in saving them. But this will just help me cut them all off at one time now. When I get to the next step, I think it'll help, and it'll lay exactly the same either way. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in fast forward. So now everything is pressed, and this is what we have. Now, I do have to say, personally, I think that it is okay if you skip from the second cut on with piecing and trimming off the sides, because I think we have a good foundation with what's right here from piece 1 and, you know, from cut 1 and trimming after cut 1. I think there's a perfect foundation for squaring this block up in the end. And I'll just give you an example real quick. So say this was the last part. I'm not really going to cut it, but if this was the last part and you were to put your square on the ruler up here at the top, line up your 90-degree angle, you have a pretty darn good foundation already set with this angle. So if you were to turn it this way, there's another 100% good foundation. Same with when it goes to be trimmed right here. You know, if you're just using this template only, along with this way, if you were just using this template only. So you definitely have plenty of wiggle room if you just keep going after you're done with the first step, which is number 1. From 2 until now, we're going to go to number 3 on the line. We're going to go to the 3 dots. So where those 3 dots are, we're going to find that long line, and we're going to line that up now and start cutting these off right here and set those aside, and then we will be adding these again. I am not going to trim afterwards. I am just going to go ahead and cut this off you know, and then add the next piece. That way I can just save that whole trimming for last, because like I said, personally using this template now, having the actual template instead of doing my own thing that I have done in the past, having the actual template after cut one, I think you can just bypass everything and trim the final block when everything is done, because it all seems to be lining up. And just for show, we're going to line up a square ruler on here to show you from the diagonal down here to the diagonal. I hope you can see that in the screen. If I was to trim this right here and right here now, I would have a perfectly square top part of the block. Everything fits because I'm ending right here at my 10-inch. See how that ends right there at the 10? And I have plenty of space up here at the 10. So I definitely have a perfect 10-inch block, and I'm going to line up right here on this side and on the top, so you can see this would be a perfect square no matter how I cut it, whether I use the template or not. So again, I'm going to bypass, I'm just going to use the template every time for one, and then trim everything across, which would be right here, and then everything else I'm not going to bother any squaring up until after I have attached cut 3. So I'm going to go ahead and start with getting everything together and cutting cut 3 on all of these blocks. Okay, last and final cut from the bottom up. This time we're going to go with the 3 dots and the line on the 3 dots. So we're going to the 3 dots. Same as every time though, you want to make sure that this template shape is always in the center. So we're going to line those 3 dots up and the line on those 3 dots up on the seam, and we're going to make a cut. This time, this is now discarded. No need to worry about any of that. Flip the template, line it up on the line with the 3 dots on the seam, and trim it off. And I'm going from the bottom up because, again, from the bottom up would be my order for these. So the next piece that's going on is this guy right here. So this is the final piece. Now this side has not been trimmed yet. So this time this will be centered pretty much on here when I go to sew it on. So for now, let's just worry about the cutting of every single block. So I'm going to show it again. Grab another piece. And already, if you haven't noticed in most of the fast forward, if I'm already facing this way, I'll use this side first. If the ruler is already facing the other way, then I do that side first. So I go ahead and cut this. And these can be saved for something else as well. You don't have to discard them. I was just saying that they are not needed after this step. This is the final step besides squaring the block up. So you just flip them, keeping everything in the same order. Now my template, again, it's on the 3 dots this time. This is the last and final cut. So I'm going to cut that off. Flip the ruler, line up the line with the 3 dots, and the reason why I say every single time over and over the same thing is so that in your brain you remember what cut you're on. And see, I just went and veered off on that. So I'm going to go ahead and fix it since this was now discard. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes with my left hand I veer off. It's not my fault. It just happens that way. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish cutting all these up. So again, I'm on this side. Flip the ruler, line up on the 3 dots, line, and make that cut. So I'm going to go ahead and cut every single one of them, and then we will get to some sewing. So now that they are all cut, you can go ahead, if you want, and trim accordingly using this right here. But I'm not going to. Like I said a couple, little bit ago, I'm just going to go ahead and add this next piece, because if I add that, I'm going to show you right now on camera, we're going to pretend that we took a 1/4 inch seam right here. I'm going to lay this ruler on here at the 10-inch mark from corner to corner and show you that it's only catching a small portion of this anyway. A lot will be getting trimmed off, so I mean, in reality, let's slide that over right. Yep, that's perfect right there. There's no point in lining anything up perfectly, so this is how it's going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know, let's see what happens with one trimmed and the rest not. So let me trim this real quick. I'll just go ahead and use the template, just because it's right here anyway. So I'm going to line one side up, line my 90-degree angle up. The same with this area, line the 90-degree area up, put the triangle or the square in the corner, cut the other side. I'm just going to do one block this way and see. I don't think there's going to be any difference though, honestly. Okay, so I'm lining this up, 90-degree angle is on there, cutting that off. Oops, not in the right position to be. 90-degree angle up, nice and lined up, nice and lined up, everything's lined up. So I'm really literally adding a tiny little piece to each end, honestly. So I see no point in trimming at this moment. See? Like, that's all you're going to need right there. We're going to put the ruler on it with the square part right here so that you can see. So that's all there's going to be on there. So I'm going to go ahead and start attaching these. This I'll just attach hanging up just a tiny, tiny tad, and everything else will get trimmed up. So I'll see you at the sewing machine in just a minute. So literally I'm barely adding this on here. There's really no point, but I'm going to put it on here anyway. Am I all the way yet? So this is definitely, I don't know, it doesn't come out like you think. So let's add the other side. So that's going to go right here. Just going to hang it over about a 1/4 inch. Line it up right here. I can see about right there is where I'm going to start my stitching. And I'm going to fold that back just like this and show you guys. Hopefully you can see the whole thing. There we go. So, I mean, we're really going to be trimming all that off. Is such a waste, but it's getting trimmed off to square this up. So I'm going to try to hold this seam though out of the way though, so I don't waste too much of this square, so I can use these pieces. So last and final piece on the rest of them, let's see. We're going to grab it. It's still going to be the same thing. I'm still going to have plenty left, but I'm just going to line this up right here. I'm going to put it right sides together like any other time, and I'm going to chain piece the whole entire lot of them through. just like this. All the way down. So I can go ahead and do one at a time if I wanted, just so that you guys can see. I'm going to line this one up, sort of on there like this. Most of that's going to get cut off. Oops. I'm just going to go ahead and have a different kind of amount of waste. So again, you can see, except this time when I cut it, it'll cut this and I'll have plenty of trim on this side right here to be able to save as much of this as possible. So that's what it should look like at this point without have trimming. If you would have trimmed, it would have looked a little bit different. You would have wings. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in fast forward now and change. You just watched part 2, so I hope you caught part 1, and I hope you go over and catch part number 3 of the Burst Block series with my full review. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you subscribe down here and ring that bell to get notifications when I'm live, and like my videos, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.